Hi, everyone, and welcome back to California Divorce 101. I'm your host, Anna, and this is episode 4 of our series. Today, we're diving into a topic that's becoming more and more relevant, especially here in California. It's increasingly being called gray divorce. Now, you may be wondering, what exactly is gray divorce, and why is it becoming so common? Well, if you're in your post-retirement years or know someone who is, this episode is definitely for you. We're going to explore the unique challenges, the emotional roller coaster, and the legal and financial steps involved in this increasingly prevalent trend. Before we begin, here's an important disclaimer. All content was researched, drafted, and produced by the attorneys and supporting team members at Marathi Newfer. The voices and audio delivery are powered by Gen AI. This podcast is for informational purposes only. If you need legal advice tailored to your specific situation, consult a qualified family law attorney. Now, to dive deeper into today's topic, I'm joined by Kate, who will be sharing insights on the unique challenges of gray divorce, from emotional hurdles to legal and financial considerations. Welcome, Kate.
Thanks for having me again.
Let's start with the basics. When we say gray divorce, what are we really talking about? What's the definition and just how big of a deal is this, especially here in California?
Great question to start with. Gray divorce typically refers to the dissolution of a long-term marriage that happens later in life, usually in your late 60s or beyond, often after retirement. And it's more common than you might think. It's definitely more than just a small blip on the radar. The rate of gray divorce in the U.S. has more than doubled since the 90s. And California is no exception, given its large aging population.
Doubling is a pretty big jump. So what's behind all of this? Why are we seeing such an increase?
It's a mix of factors. One of the biggest drivers is that people are living longer than ever before. Once you hit 50 or 60, you may still have 20 or 30 years ahead of you. That makes people think, do I really want to spend the next decades in a relationship that isn't fulfilling?
I can get that. If you know the relationship isn't working, that's a long time to stay unhappy. What else is contributing to this trend?
Our perception of divorce has evolved. It's no longer viewed as taboo, and people feel more empowered to prioritize their happiness, even if that means ending a long marriage. This shift reflects a healthier mindset, where individuals are no longer bound by societal pressures to stay in unhappy relationships.
I can see how that would play a big role. And what about financial independence? Is that playing a role too?
Absolutely, it's huge. More women, especially, are financially independent these days. They no longer feel like they need to stay in a marriage for financial security. They have choices they might not have had in the past.
Got it. Now, let's talk about what makes gray divorce different from other types of divorce. What are the unique emotional challenges?
Gray divorce often comes after decades of shared history. You've built a life together, created memories and established routines. Untangling all that is incredibly emotionally complex. There can be grief and a deep sense of loss. Plus, you're figuring out who you are outside of that long-term partnership.
And what about health? Does physical health play a role in gray divorce?
Absolutely. As we age, our health naturally becomes more fragile. The stress of divorce can exacerbate existing conditions. Starting over, rebuilding your life takes a lot of energy, and it's much harder to bounce back when you're in your 60s than when you're in your 30s.
That adds another layer of pressure, especially when you're looking forward to retirement.
That's right. If you're getting closer to retirement, it can add some stress as you consider how you can recover both financially and emotionally before that target date.
That's a good segue into the legal and financial side of things. California is a community property state. So, what does that mean for someone going through a gray divorce?
In California, all assets you and your spouse acquired during the marriage are typically split 50-50. And that includes some pretty significant items like pensions, IRAs, 401ks, and even Social Security benefits. Though Social Security benefits aren't directly divided, they can still play a role in the divorce settlement.
So, how do you divide retirement accounts like 401ks?
It gets a little technical. You need something called a quadro, Qualified Domestic Relations Order. Sometimes people call it a quadro. It's a court order that allows you to divide retirement accounts without triggering early withdrawal penalties.
So, that's the legal way to avoid a tax nightmare?
Precisely. Without a quadro, you could end up paying huge penalties, which could completely derail your financial future.
Got it. Now, let's talk about spousal support. How does that work in California for a long term marriage ending in divorce?
In California, long term marriages, especially those over 10 years, often result in long term spousal support. The courts consider the length of the marriage, the age and health of both spouses, and their ability to earn. It's about making sure both spouses can maintain a decent standard of living.
And what about health insurance? How do people handle that after a gray divorce?
Losing health insurance can be a major concern after a gray divorce. One option for California residents is Cal Cobra, which allows you to stay on your ex's health plan for up to 36 months, though you'll need to pay the full premium. Alternatively, if you're 65 or older, you qualify for Medicare. For those under 65, Covered California offers health insurance plans through the state's marketplace, potentially with subsidies depending on your income.
So, it's a complex issue with a lot to navigate.
Correct. That's why planning ahead is so important.
And what about estate planning? Why is that so crucial after a gray divorce?
When you divorce, you need to update your will, trusts, and powers of attorney. You need to make sure your assets go where you want them to. And don't forget life insurance. You probably don't want your ex as the beneficiary anymore.
Definitely makes sense. Now, taxes can be tricky, right?
Oh, absolutely. Your tax filing status will change. You won't be filing jointly anymore. Plus, if you sell the family home, you might face capital gains taxes. And don't forget, alimony payments are no longer tax deductible for the payer.
A lot to think about there. Now, let's wrap up with what life looks like after a gray divorce. How do people plan for that next chapter?
It's all about establishing financial independence. You need a clear picture of your income, expenses, and assets. That means creating a realistic budget, maybe even downsizing to free up cash and lower expenses. And talking to a financial advisor is essential to making sure you're on solid ground for retirement.
Good to know. Now, beyond the finances, what about the emotional side of starting over?
It's tough, but it's also an opportunity for a fresh start. Many people find new energy, pursue long-held passions, and rediscover who they are outside of the marriage.
Well, we've covered a lot today. Any final thoughts for our listeners?
Gray divorce is complex, but with the right planning and guidance, you can navigate it successfully and build a fulfilling new chapter.
Great advice. For our listeners over 50 who might be considering divorce, the best step is to talk to an attorney who specializes in gray divorce in California. They can help you understand your rights and protect your interests. Thank you, Kate, for sharing your insights today, and thank you for tuning in to today's episode of California Divorce 101. If you have any questions or would like us to cover a specific topic in a future episode, feel free to email us at intake@caflg.com. And remember, knowledge is power. You don't have to navigate this journey alone.